It's 8:30. I know. He was just talking to me.
We're gonna call the General Government Committee meeting to order. Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
How about our minutes from our May 12th meeting?
Seems accurate to me. I'll recommend we approve them.
Second. Any discussion on the minutes? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Any public comments?
No public comments, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any information for this committee from supervisors not seated as committee members?
Rain day.
All right, how about a discussion of the labor needs at the recycling center? Sure.
Just want to bring forward down at the recycling center, our staffing needs as we're coming in the budget. We're going through the process of updating the recycling center. Some of the items that we have going on down there with staffing needs and shortages and how it affects our operation. Next slide. Nick Fuhrer is our foreman down there. Last year, 2020, we had almost 4,000 customers that come into the facility. That's not counting the ones that use our drop boxes or anything drop off. That's physically coming in there. Went through 2,200 tons of recycling in Polk County in 2020. Of that, almost 1,500 of that is collected by county staff. That's our drop boxes bringing through materials. E&R per capita, our standard is supposed to be 88 pounds per resident. We're sitting at 109 pounds we collect. So we're doing very well down there. We're doing a lot. Next slide. Current staffing, we have 4 full-time employees down there and 1 seasonal. Last year we couldn't fill the seasonal position. This year it's still open also. We used to have 11 to 9 clients from Endeavors coming down there. Now we have 4 to 5. With that, we have 6 slated to come down from Endeavors. Unfortunately, due to some health needs, we can't, they can only provide probably 4 to 5, which again slows down our sorting lines. We have 40 drop bins at 17 locations around the county, 2 to 6 bins at each site. And then we put them at the fair and other places. We haul 68 bins per week on our schedule. We try to run 2 trucks. We're open 5 days a week from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And again, we have 4 full-time staff. And there's been a request for Saturdays. We ran Saturdays last year, tried to bring 1 person in. So we split shifts to run through both those. In the last several years, staffing has maintained the same. Our volumes have been coming in. And this is no way, we have a great relationship with Endeavors with our clients. We love the relationship. They come every day, they work. Unfortunately, one of the clients, he's been there 30 years. He's been there since the recycling center opened. There's not really a backlog to replace the clients. It is the highest paying job at Endeavors for them. But their business model now for the clients is that put them into permanent employment for the company that has benefits to get them into society full time. So another issue we run into is short notice of staff coming down there from Endeavors. If we have snowstorms or other items, we get very short notice for 2 come up where we have to bring a full-time person to try to run the line, or we shut down the line. We have full-time people on the line. We end up not hauling in material. And last year we hauled, I think it was right around 45 tons. We ended up hauling to Pierce County. We didn't even process it. We had too much coming in. Next slide. You know, this is the common occurrence down there. This is our sorting bin. The commingle, this goes up for the sorting, so they can pick out the plastics and all that. When we do cardboard, we stop the line. We bring everyone downstairs on the floor. We sort cardboard bins for 3 hours during the day and come down and then go back in the line. So the line is we get about 6 hours per day from client staff because their break times, the time they're eligible to work in that. I have staff coming in early many days. We'll run the line before Endeavors gets there. Next slide. This is area, this is probably south, this is north of the sorting line, this area right here. We've made a big dent in it this spring and winter, get back there, but we still haven't reached the back of it. I don't think we've seen the back of that in years with that. So, and again, as recyclables come in bags like this, it takes staff to break that open and stuff. Next photo. What we're looking with at the project is some of the robotic sorting has become a little more economical, I'll say. Gore-Tex here has a brand, they're in over 200 facilities. They can pick 45 picks per minute as it goes through optic sorting. Again, but a machine like this, about 100,000, but a $1,500 a month charge for the service, the software on that. Next slide.
pick? Is that a piece?
That's one piece. They can do 65 in a minute. Staff, where you're looking at that, I'll get that in a second. Glacier is another one, 25 to 30 picks a minute, $10,000. Again, the $1,500 a month software maintenance requires about a $40 to $50,000 air compressor. A little more economical. These things are coming down in price if you look at them. Next slide. A couple other ones, DHS, similar to Apex. Green Machine offers for 1.1 million, you get a group of 6. These options are very good, but we're still short on staff to run all these components and keep things moving on that. You know, our goals are to keep increasing tonnage coming in. Just with able to sort that line with our current setup, if we can just run the line a little more, we can have a 30% increase coming out the backside for producing more revenue. More roll-offs at locations. You know, we're working on outreach, increased frequency of picking up the drop boxes. When we bring in the staff from the outside again, we let the boxes set. Bless you. So as you notice, probably the recycling bins at Folsom Lake here, the cardboard one especially, it's overflowing every Monday. It's always packed. So being able to get more through there makes that. But that's kind of, just want to have that discussion as we're looking at possibly 2 full-time employees, the request to come into there to help move that. Again, with only 4 full-time employees, trying to manage vacations, sick time, that other stuff with it. And we do utilize the other departments. You know, I got a driver from highway down there right now. But again, we're 2 down at highway, 4 down if you count FLMA employees. So we're kind of short, but wanted to get this on the radar so we can come back if you have questions and looking at that. And we are looking at it with the project as optic sorting and other solutions to alleviate some of this and kind of conditions where we stand.
What would be the cost per employee for 2 full, well, the cost?
You know, and that, it did, where we'd pay them probably, they took the full health insurance package, 65, 70 a year. And that's one thing to consider as you guys are looking at this going forward. You got to look at what's going on in the economy, from fast food to retail, you know, the self-serve kiosk, automatic sorting. You know, we have trouble recruiting people, and recycling especially is really tough work. So where's the line between, do we get physical staff for driving and that kind of stuff, and outreach, and robotics for the sorting? And there's also a high risk of workers' comp in the kind of work they do. So, you know, you got to weigh, does it make more sense to invest in that electronic sorting?
It's kind of a mix of both bags as we go forward, trying to look at what's more efficient, what's more economical.
What does the automated sorting compare to an individual? What is would the automation replace one head to head?
Right now, one of the issues we have is we don't have pre-sorting before our line, so everything goes up the line, where a robotic sorter could take care of a lot of the trash and stuff ahead of time, allowing more of this recyclables to be picked up. Again, it's one for one, we're working with right now SCH as we're going through the process. Right now, we're gonna install video cameras so we can watch clients pick and all that to show that. We're just waiting on the video waivers from Endeavors to make sure that that's all right with the clients and their caretakers. To try to see actually how many picks they're doing, then to put that in a metric to see what's gonna happen.
Is it the machines that would allow you to start taking number 5 plastic?
Number 5 would be more the machine, not the machines, but expanding the sorting line and the ability to sort more quicker.
So like the reason that we can't do it right now is because we just don't have the ability to sort all that.
We don't have the bins of the room to do that.
Got it.
Is the money that was allocated to the recycling renovation or whatever you call it, is that something you can access to put in a sorting machine?
That's part of the project is we're looking through those numbers to see if we can run the line or possibly move the line to the north side of the building, we might be able not to expand the building footprint very much or at all. So we're looking at that to see what equipment needs are versus the building envelope and where that 1.6 will land.
How much land do we have there?
Land there,
Let's say.
we think, yeah, it's gotta be, I'll just guess at 8 acres, but I don't have that number on top of my head. But if we encompass the whole property, that is not in the city. So the recycling center actually has a mound system for a sewer system and a well that needs to be replaced. And the mound system actually sits on the north corner of the property if you're standing there looking at it from Menards. So the toilets are pumped over there. And right now our wells are capacity right now.
Does this replace the relationship with Endeavors, or is it just to kind of alleviate that, 10, 11 down to 4 to 5
To
number?
alleviate the 11 down that, we encourage the relationship with Endeavors and their staff do a great job down there. And wouldn't want to sever those ties.
Right.
Yep.
All right, anybody else?
Remember.
All right, looks like we asked consideration of ideas to utilize the remainder of the ARPA funds.
Okay. Thank you. I passed this out and I'm gonna ask you to get your pens out and make a couple little corrections on here. What I tried to do is before we get into a variety of different resolutions to spend our ARPA funds, kind of give you a recap of what's happening and then also make a proposal how we proceed. If you look at, and I just put this together quickly, if you look at the top ARPA considerations, you'll see the items that we have already committed ARPA funds to: the recycling center, radio tower system, St. Croix Falls radio tower, LiDAR, broadband, and I left off the last two, the government center renovation, which we committed $1 million, so you add $1 million, and then emergency service funding, 10,000, so that was a total of 280,000. So instead of the remaining amount, approximate amount is $3,006,000. So that's a ballpark figure. What I wanted to show you down below are emerging proposals, and I call them emerging because they are tending to trickle up in terms of others are falling to the wayside. We're focused on a county-centric or county-wide project or something that would focus or benefit the entire county. And those are the items. So we have the Justice Center roof. We're anticipating about 2.1 million. The museum roof at 180,000. A gun range, which we've gone back and reevaluated. Our latest estimate is really a million or a little over. I call it the emergency unit or the command center. And I put a range on there. I know in a resolution it says $650,000. But I put a range because we've gone from one that has become very dilapidated to getting a brand new one. And I don't think we've considered specific designs enough, nor have we considered used vehicles. So, you know, I'm kind of at a loss there, and we need to pin that down more. And then finally, I just had a group of folks with the EDC come forward and propose a concept of a grant to encourage developers to develop senior housing. I have not brought them forward yet because I had a lot of questions still that they need to answer before they come back. So if you see here, we have over $5 million committed, and we only are not committed, but proposed, and we only have 3 million approximately remaining. From my observation, what has happened has become, and maybe legitimately so, kind of a rush to get in resolutions to propose something. And it's almost like a first come, first serve feeling to it. What I would propose, because I have and others have questions remaining on some of these things, rather than do the first come, first serve basis on all of them, and again, it's your decision. Why don't we take a breath and let us consider what questions we still want answered, and let us come to you maybe in July and August and propose that we come to a final decision on the remaining funds at that point. Say what is first up on the agenda. Questions like I mentioned, the emergency unit. I know that I think Amy's resolution is, it initially looked at it as, could this be used for public health? Absolutely. But could it also be used for the sheriff's department? What design features are needed in both? And what are must have and what would be nice to have? What are the costs of used vehicles? Do we need a vehicle at all? Could we go with a trailer? So there are lots of things we can still be asking that I think you all deserve the answers to. You should be able to ask the questions, and we should be able to ask them and answer them as well. And rather than say we have to decide now because the resolution is being submitted, why don't we wait for 2 months? Let us dig into all these questions. The gun range, you know, has fluctuated. And Mo and Don, I know, talked, and they said, what are the things that we have to have? What are the things the county has to provide? And it went from 450,000 to closer to that $1 million range. So let us pin those down. This senior development, to me, it seems like that's something, since I've been with the EDC even, as something that might, one, we have a need for senior housing, but also in the way it's designed, it would encourage folks who are ready to downsize in their senior year to move into their preferred type of housing and open up those housing for the other families, the working families, that type of thing. So I throw this out to you to give you an overview and to say it might make sense, rather than say, well, we got this resolution first, we have to vote on it. Let us wait a couple of months. Maybe in July, we give you an update, show you what we have. We ask more questions, and then we plan on August timeframe at this meeting and at the board meeting to say, let's vote on what we want.
And I will just cap it off with, I want to remind the committee that working with the auditors, we've already reclaimed the entire first tranche and reported it out. We're now done with it. And the second tranche will be accounted for and reported out the same way. So because of the ruling, the final ruling that came out in April, the 2024 deadline for appropriation, the 2026 deadline for expenditure of ARPA funds no longer exists. We've already taken care of it. So that takes that time constraint off that was initially tied to those.
Can you change the museum roof? It isn't the roof, it's a structural. It's structural. It doesn't have anything to do with the roof.
Okay,
It's the bell tower structure.
my mistake.
Oh, that's fine. I did have, can I just ask a couple of questions? There's things that, because, you know, like, I had a lot of questions around some of the one resolution in particular. And I don't know that this committee knows about, like in here it talks about, in Amy's resolution for the command center, it talks about the need by ADRC and stuff. The ADRC just voted to spend $106 million on a new bus just for Polk County.
Right.
At the meeting last month.
Yeah.
So they're buying a new bus for transportation for people that need it, that will just be for Polk County, not.
That's a very good point. And my question, back to Tanya and to Don is, or to Amy, to anyone, is who all could use this vehicle? Is it simply a Health and Human Services vehicle? Probably not. We kind of want, my thought is if we're going to spend a lot of money on something like this, let's make it useful for the entire county. So we could make it a fleet vehicle. And that way fleet will be in charge of maintenance and repairs and cleaning and that type of thing. And then, I suspect the sheriff's office and Department of Public Health would use it more than anybody. Probably public health would use it much more than anybody.
But it's understanding, like, I know we did, there was a lot of mobile clinics, things, and I know it goes up to the fair and stuff, but
Right.
how many times, like, how many vaccines were actually given out by the mobile clinics? And if we're concerned about people not being able to come in here or to their own clinics, how do they get to the mobile clinic? They get there somehow. So those are the types of questions I have around.
Right.
I mean, I like new vehicles. Heavens, my dad, they used to call him New Car Eddie. I think I inherited it. But, I think if we can get statistics, like it's pretty straightforward around the roof for this building, and other than just getting there's not a lot of questions other than we need a new roof. Okay. All that kind of stuff.
Right.
But when we get into things like the senior development grant, there's a lot of questions.
Oh,
that
yeah.
come up with that.
And I'm not saying any of these are my preferences, or I think that's what we should do. I'm just, there are ideas. We haven't had any great new ideas other than the latest one I heard on the senior housing. So I think we've kind of reached that point. There might be something new come up. But we'll probably, we've weeded out, I think if I can use that term, some of those that are more isolated or specific areas in the county and things that might be covered by local government. So we're getting close. And I thought rather than rush through, first come, first serve, let us dig into these a little more. And that doesn't mean that any of them are any less important or.
I wish we had done that from the beginning, personally. If we had done that from the beginning, I think it would have, it's too bad we can't go back and change that.
But it's been kind of an interesting filtering process. I mean, it does work its way through slowly. And next thing you know, we're left with, here are some ideas. And I thought rather than now the immediate rush to get this done, let's answer some of these questions.
Keep it back in the back of our minds, not to let that drag on too long, because look at the roof. It was 1 point something last fall, and now it's 2 million. So those costs go up the way things are now.
Well,
Exponentially.
and that's not to suggest, I thought about that. If 10 out of the 15 supervisors say, hey, I know I want this thing right now, we can vote on that. If there's anything that has 2/3, my sense is it's going to be hard to get 2/3 for some of these until we answer more of these questions.
I think you can probably separate those that don't have the intangibles. You separate the ones that grew up in the museum, those don't have the intangibles. They are what they are.
Right.
The other ones are all intangibles and require a lot of questions and a lot of digging and a lot of understanding what you truly need and how it will work. So I think you could separate them like that too, if you'd like.
How did we come, following with that, how did we come up with these figures actually on take an example, the radio tower system, $1,100,000. Is that a firm figure?
That was a formal quote from Motorola.
We do have a quote.
Yeah.
Right, we have absolute formal on those.
So we could, following up with that, saying we could actually weed out the ones that have firm costs
Oh, those are
already
already done.
established.
Those are
Yeah, those
done.
are,
Those
Yeah,
are-
these are done, that's right.
Right.
But if we had all the rest of them, we would come up with ones that have firm figures already established so that we're sure of what they cost. Right now, from 250 to 650 is a hell of a difference.
And now, and that's just a guess. Now,
Yeah, I know.
Amy's resolution and Tanya would say, and the sheriff's department, 650,000 for what they want would get a new one. I just push back a little bit to say, and maybe it makes sense to get a new one. But I would like, my thought is, let's consider what the options are. Are there used ones? Do we need and maybe we do need a vehicle, a truck.
Yeah.
But maybe we don't.
Because it'd be nice to be able to say to the taxpayers, we're gonna spend this, and here's what we're gonna be able to do with it. That's gonna benefit the county. And it can't be just vague, like saying, it's gotta have some statistics or something behind it to support it. It can't, what is it that it's gonna be used for?
And from the financial piece, now that ARPA money, this is ARPA money in our minds, but this is not technically ARPA money in the federal government's minds because of how we're recovering. Any grants you get for any of these projects are not restricted. So if this was purely ARPA money, you couldn't use a grant as your match.
Sure.
But now that this is no longer ARPA money, if there's grants out there for anything like this, you can use the county, because you would be technically using fund balance as the match to a grant. So that opens up things too, by the way, just keep in mind going forward. It's a significant difference now the way we've done it.
Are there any other ideas floating around other than these?
Oh, I've got a stack of ideas, but to be honest, none of them have caught the support of supervisors to come and fight, other than, an individual, hey, I really want it for my district. But they're a worthy project, but if they range from, what do you call the treatment for lakes, the alum treatments. It's the water, the well in Clayton. It's the ball field and social house down in Farmington. There are different things that are coming up, which most supervisors, when they hear it, they say, oh, well, that's good for them, but we had to pay for ours 3 years ago. Why shouldn't they have to pay for theirs now? So that's why these make sense. And the roofs, we know we have to do them at some point. The gun range, I think, is very worthy. We've got the building right there. I just want to make sure we have the right number, and then also to consider, are there options? The emergency unit, I think it's great that they can travel around. So my question is, I think the questions you started asking, what happens if you don't have it? How does it benefit? How does it get used after the COVID pandemic? Which I know they've got plans and ideas, so it's very worthwhile. The
Because
Sheriff's
that one
Department,
started out just to be a backup for the 911 system. That was how the conversation originally started. And now we're in a different place with it now.
Yeah, so maybe, and I would certainly encourage us to continue with the agenda and to say, let's look at some of these resolutions. And if you have questions, we can ask. But, maybe in July, we kind of can provide updates to say, okay, here's some of the questions we not answered. Here's how it starts. We're going to focus in on these things a little more. And maybe we'll start developing a consensus as to what we're going to ask for and how much we're going to spend on it. I don't want this to sound like we're kicking it down the road, but I just think it might be worth a couple of months. And unless it's something like the roof where we know it's.
I don't think it feels like it's kicking it down the road, especially with something new like senior development. We haven't really discussed the long-term impact of something like that. Because we were talking a lot right now, and for good reason, about one-to-one cost and result. But then you've got something like an effort like that, the senior development grant, that's got like longer term impacts on the housing situation in the entire county.
But it's just, I think it's a good thing to talk about.
As long as it's in my district, because I'm looking for one of those places.
So are my parents.
We should all
That's
work
the
together.
thing, there's so many people who are looking for their house, and then there's so many people who underneath them are looking for houses.
Yeah.
So, yep. There's a lot of impact on jobs and housing around here with something like that. So I like the discussion.
So if we keep going with the agenda, then the next would be the resolution considering the use of ARPA funds to pay for the Justice Center roof. Why do we have to consider using ARPA funds? If the Justice Center roof needs to be fixed, why aren't we just talking about fixing it, not ARPA funds?
It is in our capital improvement plan. And I think
Is
it's,
money in there?
no, we haven't budgeted for it, no.
Well,
But that's,
but I don't think we should mix that in with ARPA funds. I mean, it's a necessity. I mean, if our bell tower that's structural that needs to be done, we shouldn't just be hashing ARPA funds. We should be talking about doing it and how we're paying for
And just to note, if that's the decision the committee makes, that should wait until August, September, when you do your capital budget and appropriate that money in the budgeting process. I would recommend if you're gonna do any capital projects that are not funded by ARPA funds, you should probably stick to your normal budgeting plan. In which case we just build it in that process.
it. All right, what do you want to do? We're talking about the resolution concerning the use of ARPA funds to pay for the Justice Center road.
It's in the plan for 2025, right? What it is? So until 20, can I ask questions? 2025, then do we anticipate how many repairs we'll have over the next few years?
We always have money in the budget for roof repairs. You know, we always try to put some in there on that. The number we got here, we went and got a quote for a roof for that budgetary number for out to 2025, which went into the, what that time was before this economy in there, 2.5. We reached out a couple weeks ago back to that same contractor about, you know, is this a good solid number? And for right now, it's a good safe number. If we went out now, there is the possibility of some savings once you go out for RFPs. Can they reuse the flashing on the building? What system is a contractor going to fit on it? So you'll still be up in that 1.7 to $2 million range, but right now it is a good number. But it isn't 2025.
And we also have, although I can see one Supervisor Oakridge when I say this, we have in the bonding resolution that money, any unused on the government center could be used for Justice Center projects. And I will say we just reinvested some of our money in treasury notes. They're 2.55, and our lending rate is 2.1 if we take the money. So right now we're getting more on our return than what our note is, and our note is good to draw from through February of 2023. Or it locks, and we get a final balance.
That's on unspent money on the government center.
So we took a total of, I think we took a total of 8.2 million is what we could borrow. And it's a line, so we only borrow as needed. We're allowed draws up until February 2023. Then the draws lock, but the way the bonding resolution is written is either capital improvements to the government center or capital improvements to the Justice Center.
so if we borrowed that money to pay for the Justice Center roof, for example,
We could leave the 2.1 sitting in treasury.
and collect 2.5%.
So Vince, is this one of those that you'd rather we waited on to give it a little time to look further, or is this something we should be acting on?
Here's what I would, this is just my opinion. the roofs, you may, as this committee may say, you know what, let's go ahead and consider the roof, if, whether you do or you don't. Because that's fixed, we know what it's gonna be. The others, I would say, let's come back in July and show what we've got, what are the options. It'll force me to go out and drill down deeper into what exactly we want to need. Consider it in July. May want to make a decision in July, or we may have more questions, and then let's just plan on August as the month we're really going to finalize the end of the ARPA fund. At least as a temporary plan.
And if it's perfect with the budget process anyway.
I just want to clarify one thing on that, the 2.1. So with the 2.1 from the ARPA money, that would be in the treasury?
So what we did is, we're very cash heavy right now. So we keep, yeah, I wish I was. So we keep a standing 12 million in investments. For a long time, we had that in WISC, which is just a very safe, low interest because the rates weren't there. We've moved that money to much higher rates now, anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5. We're setting up a separate ARPA fund for the ARPA money that's sitting there. And we've developed a cash flow schedule based on the projects that have already been approved and kind of what I see in the future. Keeping liquidity based on our 2 years plan. And we're using treasury notes, which are highly liquid. If need be, could you just pay discounts on the coupons on them? But right now, as of last week, I haven't gotten today's quotes. I'm getting new quotes today for this money. They were 2.55 to 2 year treasuries as of last week. So we already have some of our existing 12 million now in 2 year treasuries. With the ARPA money, we'll stagger based on that. I think the rates are going to be higher today when I look at rates this weekend.
So does that kind of put us in a 2 year range then with that money? So say like that 2.1.
Yeah, the idea was that we step ladder the money based on the recycling project and all that, kind of knowing when it's going to come out. But step ladder that money, don't get beyond the 2 or 3 year range, then we can always reinvest. But to keep liquid coming in at a certain point, but we're sitting in a very strong cash position, so liquid is not a huge concern right now, to be honest. Okay.
What's the committee's flavor? Want to hold off on everything and we could just report back to the county board, sent it back to us. We actually approved all of these. Unanimous vote of this committee. So if we just reported back to the county board that you kicked it back to this committee, we're still working on it. We won't be bringing anything to the next or the upcoming county board. These won't be coming back yet. Is that where we're at? Does anyone want something different?
Well. I would say, like the museum one, just move it forward. I mean, we know the number. It's not in the capital improvement plan. So I would say, I mean, if we add it to the capital improvement plan, when does that happen? I mean, how far out does it go? You know, it's because everything seems to get pushed all the time. And it would be nice to be able to get some of these things done. You know, like these things that already got done. Except I think the recycling center is going to need more money. But, and I'm okay with if we think that this roof, that we have other options to be able to get this roof fixed. I just, you know, how far do you push it out? Because it's 20 years old, it's way past its lifetime, blah, 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 everybody knows that.
And I would agree. I think my personal opinion is 2025, and Mo can give me the look if I'm wrong. But that's probably a little bit too long to wait on the Justice Center roof. The museum structure, it sounds to me like we have damage there. It can only get worse. It's hard to repair. My gut would be fix it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mo can speak to that better than I.
So let's move forward with those two.
Yeah.
and hold off on the rest and do all the investigation, and then we can make final decisions on the balance. Those two are structural. They're both needed. They're gonna have to happen. There's not gonna get better. There's not a lot of outside potential intangibles with that, like there is on all the others. I would support moving those two forward and holding back. Take Vince's advice on the balance, do some more investigation.
The two roofs.
Yes.
So even considering all we just talked about with the investments and how we can come out kind of on top.
I will say, I just looked at 2-year treasury, it's at 3.24 as of right now.
Right.
Nice jump.
Yeah, so that's the thing, once we get our quotes back this week from today, you know, once you discount it, we're probably above 3 on the treasuries.
That's a,
You know, both of them could be deteriorating, to agree, we could do some loss too. Construct some continual damage. And who knows what a roof is gonna do if it starts leaking.
But Chad, is there enough money to do the Justice Center roof, the museum, and the bonding?
Well, we can't do the museum, that's excluded, that's not listed in the bonding, the Justice Center is, you have to list the actual structures, when you just did Justice Center and Government Center. The bonding, you guys approved 5 million borrowing from the bonding by the administrator, 1 million from ARPA, 1 million from fund balance. Anything beyond that for the Government Center, the administrator has to come back. So that still leaves you 3 million on your credit line at 2.1%. So I gotta be honest, just, I mean, giving you best business advice, when rates are spiking and they're 3.24 right now, and we're paying 2.1. You're talking about making money on money.
because you said there's over 3 million left on that line of credit.
There's right at 3 million that hasn't been, you've authorized the administrator to use 5 million of that line on.
Yeah.
5 million and change.
And that's the only reason, because I agree, like, I'd be okay moving forward, but I think just with, not with this money, but with the line of credit. Since we're making money on this money sitting in the treasury.
But now the museum, you could not use the bonding money for it. The way the notes
We're
are.
also talking a difference of 180,000 to 2 million.
Yeah.
So we probably could use 180,000 of ARPA funds right away. And then talk about the Justice Center roof through financing.
You could either amend this year's budget, which would require 2/3, just like voting on using ARPA funds, or have it in next year's budget.
Because we probably wouldn't start on until next year anyway, right, Paul?
More than likely would get replaced this spring.
You just have to pull the money down into the accounts by the 1st of February. And the line closes then and locks in.
Sounds like a good option.
Are we gonna move on 2 of them? ARPA funds for the museum roof? And then consider a resolution on the Justice Center roof through the.
I mean, I can draft a resolution between now and the board. It takes 2/3 to get it to the floor, but it takes 2/3 to pass it anyway. So if you guys want me to, I can draft a resolution between now and then. For the roof.
Do we need a motion or can it go just by consensus?
Are there any dissenters to that? Like, as long as then I would call it consensus.
We'll move it to those 2 to the county board. And the gun training facility will be on hold at least till August to give you time to.
Well, yeah, we'll get some answers in July. We'll come back and
On the command center as well.
Yeah.
That's the next
Oh,
one.
that is 2 hours. Yeah.
the what?
Command center as well.
All right, how about resolution to amend the budget to incorporate carry forward?
All right, so this one, I just got we're trying to get the audit done before I leave. We're trying to speed it up a little bit. I just got the financials Thursday. I did not have time to balance the financials this weekend. I gotta finish them this week, so I can do, this is our carryover for our statutory things. There's a couple other things in there that are gonna be in there, but what I need is permission just to bring this to the full board this month. I'd like to get it tied off before I leave. There will also be, we normally do an ADRC carryover because she has a trust fund. Sharon alluded to it. She's just gonna use the full amount of that trust fund to buy that van, so there'll be a budget amendment for that. The sheriff's office, I'm gonna wrap all this stuff into one. The sheriff's office has got a grant from the state for training and recruiting. That'll be in that, and then the sheriff's office is getting a grant from the tribe. That'll be in that as well, so they can spend it this year. So if the committee's good with it, I'll finish balance on the draft audit and get that out. Just on a note on the draft audit, it is our goal to get the CAFR, the consolidated, well, now it's the annual consolidated financial report done before I leave on the 5th. In the draft, we're adding about 2.8 million to the fund balance this year. But that number will change some. But we are going to have an additional add back to the fund balance this year. You probably won't get the report on the audit before I leave, but we're going to try to get those statements done so I can sign off. So once again, I have to bring the resolution when I finish this, and I apologize. Just trying to sell a house, buy a house, pull floats on a parade on the weekend, just kind of ate up my weekend. But it'll take 2/3 to bring it to the floor, but it's 2/3 to pass anyway.
What if it doesn't pass?
Then she's got a problem, forestry's got a problem. The carryovers are very standard. The sheriff's office got free money that they won't get. I don't think that would be a good idea. So, this is just part of our normal budgeting process, this carryover thing.
Yeah, couldn't it almost be in the
Consent.
consent agenda?
Yeah, I guess so. It's a requirement to do for the audit process.
It probably would be a standalone, but I mean, it almost could be, because it would be very detrimental if it didn't.
It would be a bad idea not to give him his money and her money and keep the rest of your money. That would be a bad idea. So,
All right, so do we need a motion to send that resolution to county board? It's on here as a consideration of resolution. And then 2020 budget.
I guess that works. You don't have it before you, but I'm telling you what's in it, or we can just do the 2/3. Okay, well, it'll be easier just to do this.
We get a motion and maybe send it with the recommendation. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. That brings us to our resolution 2122. Large public assemblies. Did this one get kicked back here to this committee too?
Yes, if you recall, we came to the board meeting after this committee approved it, said, let's move forward. There were some questions asked, and they were detailed questions like how many CME or how many medical staff are needed at events. And somebody said, that's not enough, we need more. Why is it, what's it based on? And the answer was, well, it's based on kind of our guidance from the state, as I understood it. So I asked Brian to stop what he was doing and run over here so that if we had questions. I think, if you recall, the large assembly resolution we had was extremely old and outdated. And Lisa pointed out, we really need to update this. And so that's what we did. We updated it. We had Brian, we had Jason from zoning, and came up with what we thought was the best resolution. There just happened to be a lot of questions at the board meeting from a few people. So we said, let's go back to this board and we'll answer some of those questions. But in particular, I know the one was, how many medical staff do we need at such large events? And I don't, Brian, did that come from state guidance?
I don't recall that it came from state guidance. I think we hashed it out at the meeting because
there's so many unknowns when it comes to medical response. I mean, you could overwhelm any response you have there. I think we tried to look at some of the other counties that had large assemblies and look at some of their guidance. And I think that's kind of how we came to a number. Certainly you could require more, but there isn't a lot of these that happen anyway, these large assemblies, especially with the numbers that set. We kind of took out the wedding venue type things and made it more like a four-wheeler rally, 10,000 people or something. So, but I don't recall, Vince, that we got that from any state.
The one question on page 6 in your packet agenda was the proficient, one staff person per 1,000 expected to assemble to a maximum staffing requirement of 5 trained individuals. The question came up, one, if there's 50,000 people there or 25,000 people there, the question was, that means we can only have a maximum of 5 people. So the way it's written may have caused some confusion. Number 5.
Well, the way that it's written makes sense, to a maximum staffing requirement of 5 trained individuals. So we can only require them to have a maximum of 5 people. So beyond that, you're only required to have 5. At that point, per 1,000 people doesn't matter.
Right.
I think some people were just confused by it.
When I think somebody said, what if there's 50,000 or
Yeah.
100,000?
You can certainly have more if you want to, but we can only require them to have a maximum of 5.
Do you think that was meant to say minimum?
I think that would have made everybody more comfortable.
Yeah.
That might have been a snafu at our, when we were throwing stuff up on the screen. Well, but if you make a minimum, then they have 100 people, they gotta have 5 medical people there.
Well, why don't we just take that whole last part of the sentence out and just say one staff person per 1,000 expected to assemble. And then there is no maximum. If there's 50,000, why do you need 50 people?
I think they wanted to avoid that. That would be my guess. Like they don't want to, my guess is that they didn't want to require 50 medical staff. Right. They're trying, my guess is they're trying to come up with a reasonable number of, where you can stop saying, okay, you need a full hospital on staff for your event.
But
So it's just a language.
and I hate to, but Lisa, how many people do we expect at the Trail Hogging event?
I would have to look at this year's permit.
If you had a rough number, I didn't
I
know.
think that they sell 2,000 to 3,000 tickets, if I'm remembering.
How many?
I think they sell 2,000 to 3,000 tickets.
Yeah, that's the biggest event.
That's the only event that's we've had hold for the last.
Yeah.
And this would only apply to any assemblies now if changed for 1,000 or more. So if you change that to minimum, if it were just 100 people, it wouldn't require the assembly permit. If it were 900 people, it wouldn't require, but once it hits that 1,000.
But if it's 1,000 or 4,000, you gotta have 5, even if it's only 1,000.
Right.
So. It's the only time.
Yeah, because as written, every 1,000 you hit requires 1 trained staff up to 5,000, and at that point, you're capped out at 5.
Yeah.
I mean,
They can have more.
the language makes sense.
Wasn't the original intent just to change it from 100 to 1,000? So why did everything else get thrown in with it? Any line you read on here, I mean, read line 8, right below there. We're talking about telephones, providing service for the maximum people at the rate of at least 1 separate line. Won't everyone there have a cell phone in their pocket? It's just how, are we trying to rewrite this, or what's this committee doing?
No, I think it, Denise Prey, had some questions on it. And so we just,
Isn't everything that's marked up on this sheet the questions? Isn't that what they asked Denise to do, is just give us her copy of what?
Yeah.
That's what every one of these green circles and.
I gotta be honest, line 8 is, I think is something we missed. I think we probably would have struck that when we were modernizing this ordinance. So we were trying to modernize it. I think we just missed number 8.
Brian, have you look at the changes that even Denise requested?
I haven't seen it since we had our meeting.
Is this something maybe we should just let Brian take back and take another look at? Instead of us trying to put something together?
Yeah. Has he already applied for the Hagen?
It's done this year, so this is
Yeah.
not
It's
time
done.
sensitive at all.
So maybe we bring it back and
Yeah, we'll let Brian have a look at the changes that Denise is offering and see if they make sense.
Yeah, Brian and Jason from zoning and
Bring us back a clean copy, a clean version and.
As is. Once it's, you know, or
Cleaned up.
disapproved, or yep,
Yeah, there are some things that make.
but this is whole rewrite.
you want it back to this committee next month and then the board.
Well, if that's enough time for Brian to get it done, if it's not time sensitive, it wouldn't have to be next month if it wasn't ready.
Not urgent.
Just put it on the work plan, like, as a future agenda things, so I don't forget to follow up on it.
All right. We're good. All right, that brings us to our committee plan.
So, in July, annual audit reports, annual reports, and evaluate and consider budget requests from outside agencies. As I've stated, I'm trying to get the audit ready. I can sign off, so it'll be ready in July. Annual reports. I think we'll figure out a way to work through. I think administrators working on a plan for succession. Evaluate and consider budget requests from outside agencies. So we are going to do half of them, half the agencies in July, half in August. I have all the paperwork from everybody with the exception of a couple. They have till June 30th to get me that. I'm going to go ahead and prepare the packages for the committee and email them to the administrator and the committee members before I leave on the 5th, so that you guys have those. And the administrator's given me the order. He wants them to appear, and I'll get those scheduled, and then you'll have a short presentation from each. You'll see their performance, which the exec looked at last week, and then as well as their additional funding requests, and then they can, you know, say this is why we want the funding. You guys can decide which direction to go on that. So that'll be July and August. Annual budget review. All right. Fee schedules in August is formal, budget review in September, October, approval in November, and everything else looks pretty pat. I think it's all squared away.
And then we, last year on the outside agencies, then we allow them like 10 minutes for their presentation and then 5 minutes of questions from the committee.
Yeah, that's roughly what we're allocating this time.
Otherwise, if you don't do that, I mean, they can give PowerPoints that can go a long time.
Yes.
So who would we be seeing?
In July, I believe the three are tourism, EDC, and museum.
So I'm gonna coordinate schedules, and then the others will be West Cap, West Central Regional, Kinship. And I'm missing somebody. And Fair.
Yeah.
Well, Extension is technically a department. They're not under the Department 13, they're technically their own department, so they'll come up in the normal budget process. It's an auditing. Technically by statute, they're a department.
All right, so we don't need to add anything to the work plan. All right, how about subject matters for our next meeting?
Do an update on ARPA options. And we'll do the large assembly resolution. We can ask Brian to look at that at the end of the month. Do that.
Anyone have anything else? All right, we have one item to go. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll stand adjourned at 9:30.